Oh, yeah, I know what you're thinking. We just made a video like 2 hours ago talking about the Detroit Red Wings and some comments made by Steve Yzerman on an article. And now we're doing the same thing with Jim Rutherford, because what Ian McIntyre did was he compiled a list, an interview of a whole bunch of comments made by President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford with Sportsnet. I'm going to assume it's just Ian McIntyre going out there and interviewing him, but either way, we had ourselves some comments made by Jim Rutherford in regards to the Vancouver Canucks and what some of the thought processes are in some of the moves and potential acquisitions. So, this article, Q&A, Rutherford on the Hronek extension and the Canucks past season, it will be linked in the description if you want to go ahead and read all of this on your own time, but I wanted to read, react, and reply to a bunch of these thoughts as well, just because Jim Rutherford gives us a lot of content here. So, let's go out there and read this interview that has been slightly edited for length and clarity. Sportsnet, or Ian McIntyre, asks, Filip Hronek was only an RFA, not a UFA. But how happy were you to get that contract concluded? Rutherford says, I'm really pleased. He's still at a young enough age of 26 that his game and his production can even grow. Man, I really hope it does, but, he should just be coming into the prime of his career. We obviously liked the player right from the time we traded for him, and with the price we paid, we were hoping that this was a player that we would have for the long term. We really feel like he fit in seamlessly with the team, and he's been a good player for us. So getting him signed and getting him comfortable knowing he's going to be here for 8 more years was important, and we feel good about it. Honestly, I feel like if you had cut and pasted this entire comment from Filip Hronek this year to JT Miller 2 years ago, for example, when the Canucks initially signed him to his big bad extension, I feel like you could really apply the same sort of thought process. The Vancouver Canucks like what they see out of Hronek. They think he's young enough. They think he's still got room to grow. You could go out there and disagree, like maybe I have for a little bit, but I will say, there's no doubt that Filip Hronek, for good chunks of the 23-24 season, was a phenomenal defenseman, and if he's able to expand upon that, if he's able to consistently get 50, 60, 65 points a year, then I think this contract will definitely be worth it in the long run. It's just whether or not you're guaranteed to getting that, that's not ever a guarantee, so we will see whether or not he fulfills it. If he does, then amazing. Of course, the contract will be good at that point. For now, though, it's been very obvious from my commentary over the past few weeks that I'm still looking at Hronek with the perspective of his playoff run, which really wasn't good. I mean, it's difficult for me personally to watch that guy perform and watch that guy not show up in the playoffs and then be like, hey, here's $7.2 million, but it's all about the big picture, right? He was a lot better in the regular season and in the first half of that regular season at that. So that's the kind of player that GM Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford are re-signing here. Let's go out there and read some more of these comments. GM Patrick Allvin said Hronek was at the top of the pecking order among your free agents. Could his re-signing untangle other negotiations and lead to some of your UFAs getting signed? Wherever they fall in the pecking order, Jim Rutherford said, we're in the business here to sign players. We've talked enough to some of our players and, it's really their choice now. And if not, we're only a number of days away from free agency. One way or another, we'll have a better understanding of what our team is pretty soon. This is what I loved about Jim Rutherford when he was initially hired by the Vancouver Canucks. When Jim Benning got the can, when Rutherford and Allvin were brought in, what I loved about the JR stuff is that we would continuously see interviews like this, where he goes out there into the media. There would be a lot of questions tossed his way about a Canucks team that at the time was very bad. And Jim Rutherford would do his best to calm the waters. He's an old guy. He's got a lot of wisdom. He's been in this business for years. He knows what it takes to say the right things and to keep people at peace. So these kinds of comments, I think, as the Canucks have gotten better over the years, they're not as necessary as they were back when Rutherford and Allvin were trying to reset the roster. Get rid of Bo Horvat, get rid of OEL, move on from all this other stuff, the baggage that the Jim Benning and Bruce Boudreau era left in Vancouver. And Jim Rutherford's interviews with the media consistently would give the fan base much to look forward to in the future. So these are the kinds of comments, man. He's saying that, yeah, we kind of have our ideas in mind. Now it's all up to the players who are our UFAs to decide if they want to come back at the money that we have them pegged at. A month in the year off-season, Sportsnet asks, why haven't more players been re-signed? I don't know. It varies from year to year, Jim Rutherford said, player to player. Sometimes you just have to let these things play themselves out. Are you surprised? The reply is. I thought there was a chance we could have had a couple of more signings by now, but I don't see a lot of other signings around the league either. That's a pretty good point, honestly. Like, aside from the minor contracts, we haven't really seen too many big extensions and guys getting the bag. I know Jake Gensel, there's rumors about Carolina trying to re-sign him, so that's going to make it very difficult for Rutherford and Alvin to get their guy back, if that's the case. Do you think part of the standoff is both sides grappling with the idea of historic salary cap inflation over the next few years and what that means for salaries now? I can't speak for other teams, JR says. We do projections all the time. Of course, it's a little bit of a juggling act trying to figure out how to fit these guys within our cap. Our projections, compared to what the players think they should get, may not always be the same. And then if you just give the player what they want, that means there could be another player that you can't add to your lineup. Now, talking about the Vancouver Canucks doing these projections, making sure they never run out of time, making sure they understand at all times what their salary cap structure looks like, that's a totally different strategy than what we had seen out of Jim Benning. Oh, we ran out of time, we couldn't sign these guys, we didn't negotiate with them, etc., etc. It seems like with Emily Castonguay at the helm, the cap wizard herself she is, it seems like with this staff, they're very adamant in pushing forward, getting conversations done, and making sure everybody knows what the numbers are, what the Vancouver Canucks feel these players are worth, and what the players want too. So, as JR said, it's all up to these players at this point. It's their choice. Do they want to come back? Speaking about whether or not these players want to come back, the question here, are you playing hardball, holding the line at what you think the players are worth in the context of what the Canucks can afford to pay? I don't know, JR said. I mean, we have a cap and we have a budget. Somewhere along that line, there always has to be give and take within negotiations, and as much as you think you'd like to hold the line, it doesn't necessarily turn out that way. Speaking about other players and outside parties, how big could the job be this summer if most of your free agents leave? It's always a big job to try and make the right decisions. We do feel comfortable in the fact that we have 4 or 5 guys now from Abbotsford that should be knocking on the door to be with the big team. We have Lekkerimaki coming, which based on his year in Sweden and the AHL, if he comes in and has a good camp, he'll make a case to be on the team right away. We have a bigger pool of players now to turn to than we did a year or two ago. And that, of course, is very nice to hear that the Vancouver Canucks have this much faith in some of their Abbotsford guys. If you wanted to talk about Lekkerimaki, okay, he's 1. You want to toss out maybe Cole McWard, they had just signed him, that's 2. Do you want to say Arshdeep Bains? Could he be tossed in there? Honestly, I think he's not ready yet, but you could very well say him. You could say Elias Pettersson on the blue line, maybe, and then there are a few extra guys that might be able to crack a spot in the lineup. Akito Hirose, yeah, forgot about him, but JR labeling the Abbotsford team as legitimate feeding ground for potential Vancouver Canucks players in the next little while here. That's awesome because I think most of us remember for a good chunk of the Utica Comets days, other than Bo Horvat and Jacob Markstrom, there weren't really too many Utica Comets that actually became real-life NHL players. Hronek was a big domino. If players near the bottom of the pecking order have had to wait, do you risk alienating them or making them feel less wanted? Sportsnet asks. JR then replies, that's a fair point, but up until July 1st, we're not concerned about that. You know, I've always felt that if a player really likes it somewhere and they want to stay with that team and the city, they're going to figure out how to do it, whether they have to wait a little while or not. And if they're 50-50 on staying, they're going to be 50-50 regardless. I have confidence that there's going to be some players that really want to stay in Vancouver. Like Dakota Joshua, like Nikita Zadorov. In fact, I think that may be our time here today. There are a few extra comments made about Zadorov and Joshua. You're always going to have that situation. There's going to be fan favorites that the fans would like to stay. When Bo Horvat left, he certainly was a highly respected guy with the Canucks fan base, but he left and the Canucks kept going and the team was fine and went forward. So that's going to happen year after year, where you get a fan favorite that may or may not stay. Moving away from free agency, I'll leave you into the rest of this article if you want to go out there and read it. The article is linked in the description, but I wanted to talk about these comments from Hronek. Not Hronek, excuse me. I saw the picture and the title over there kind of filled my mind with this dude. I wanted to talk about these comments made by Rutherford because it goes over a lot of the Canucks transactional issues, whether or not they could bring some of these guys back, and what the response is to the Hronek deal. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. How do you feel about JR speaking out about Filip Hronek? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you feel the same way or if you're feeling a little bit differently here. Thoughts in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.